But what I think our downfall was this time, like, I don't know what it was because I feel like I've spent like twice as much time to study for this test versus the last one. And I did like mediocre on this one. And I don't know like how, because I feel like I had everything down.
Right. Yeah, I was surprised at the results of this exam, I have to say. And especially because so many people left so many questions blank, which I did not understand, I have to say. I mean, I put three what I thought were easy questions in about the models that we had looked at in the book. So, you know, here are the two factors that lead to self-esteem, internal and external. Like, so I had three big point questions that directly related to diagrams that we had looked at, and people left them blank.
I feel like the content was all there because I was able to find most everything either in the notes or in the book, like word for word. It was just a matter of like addressing it, the question asked. Because I'm like, I don't need to write a paragraph for this, but I feel like if I don't, then I don't know. I didn't think I was always getting my point across. I wrote some fairly long answers.
Right. Jean, what about you? What did you feel?
I feel like yeah, we did go over everything that was on the test. I feel like it was just me. I don't know if I needed to probably look over a few things a little bit more, but I feel like when I was reading the questions, I was familiar with the content.
Right.
So yeah, I think I just did that on the test.
Everybody did, to be honest. Everyone. So, you know, then I'm not sure how to address that, because typically I would think that that was something I had done. But, like I said, I mean, I put three questions there that directly related to diagrams. Even if you couldn't remember, all you had to do was open and find the diagram. So, yeah, I'm not sure what to do.
There are more chances in the future for redemption. That's what I told myself.
That's very true. That's very true. What if I reopened that exam and did it again over the weekend?
I'll take any chance I get to redeem myself.
Would that is that a reasonable way to approach this problem? That's what I'm trying to decide. I think I might do that. I might reopen it. For another opportunity. I'm thinking about it. Okay, so we are moving on to chapter 12. And I'm flipping the syllabus around just between Thursday and today. I decided that I'm going to do my version of Dr. Stodden and Goodway's model first. So when I was looking at this chapter a little more closely, as you see I've got stickies all over the place here, they spend a lot of time setting up the history behind the relationship between being physically active and being obese. Okay? There's a whole slew, I mean, he actually put them in a book, because he did so many. When you are looking here, and I can't say his name properly, I think it's Parexkova, I'm not quite sure how to say it. There are multiple studies by Dr. Parexkova from the early 70s right through to the late 70s. And even then, some of his students took on his data. So it was a hugely detailed piece of work, and he followed a couple of groups of children through their teenage years. And so I think the first group of boys, the first study, the boys were 10 years old. And then he followed them over the next, I want to say 8 to 10 years. Okay? And so it's a really detailed piece of work that looks at the longitudinal impact of physical activity on body composition. Okay? And when I was looking at it again, because it's a long time since I've looked at that info, and even when in my grad degree we didn't look at it in a lot of depth, we kind of flitted over it just again as a background. But one of the things that struck me when I was looking at this was how much we have known for how long that our obesity issue in our children and our adult population is worse than it's ever been, right? When we've had this information about the link between physical activity and body composition since the early 70s, right? So I found that I guess I hadn't really thought it through for a long, long time. I found that really a stark reminder of how important it is to stay up to date and pay attention to the science and the research, right? Because I think that had we really taken Dr. Parexkova's work to heart and done things differently, maybe we would not have the problems, the health problems that we now are experiencing, right? So that was kind of depressing in a way, because I was like, well, how come we're getting worse, and you know? So, my plan is to not cover that body of work, although I strongly recommend that you read it so that you understand where the next stuff is coming from, all right? What I want to do is start at the point where, and I've got to find the right tag here. So there's a really nice summary paragraph on page 247, just before the adulthood subheading, that says that that unfortunately it appears that lifestyles containing more or less physical activity and more or less sedentary behavior tend to persist in youth. So active lifestyles need to be adopted in early childhood, right? So that's kind of the crux of a lot of what I have talked with you about over the semester. It's really one of the underlying principles behind what I do on the playground with the children, right? Is it's too late to give them PE in kindergarten or elementary school, right? We have to start earlier than that, right? If we go all the way back to the beginning of the semester, we talked about the brain research and those windows of opportunity for gross motor skills, right? Those are closing down 5 to 6 years old, so during that kindergarten year, right? So we need to work with these children before that to help them become competent in these fundamental gross motor skills that are going to play the foundation for them staying physically active as they get older, right? So I want to start at the point, and now I can't find it. Okay, here we go. All right, so on page 252, motor competence, activity, fitness, and body composition. So the book, the chapter mentions a study by Dr. Stodden and Dr. Goodway and a pile of others. The prelim of that study was published by Stodden and Goodway in 2007, I believe, in a PE journal. And then they beefed it up a lot and published it in a science journal. And that's where I want to start, because as the chapter explains, that was kind of the beginning. That 2008, 2009, can't remember, study is really going to end up being a key historical study as we move forwards. It laid the foundation now for what's coming, looking at these links between motor competence that we've talked about, physical activity, health status, all right? So that's where I'm gonna start with that model today. And then on Thursday, what I hope to do is, because some of these research articles that they have post-2008, I haven't read yet. So what I want to do for Thursday is to try to look at, so what's coming now based on this crucial study that we had from Stodden and Goodway, all right, who happen to be good friends of mine, so that's always nice. All right, so that's where we're going to start. I don't know that this will take a lot of time. If you have questions, please jump in, because I think it's a really fascinating article. It totally changed my thinking about some things. And it's initiated a great dialogue between, some really great researchers in the field, because some people disagree with this model. Remember that a model is just a tool. It's a way of trying to visualize and explain something that you're working with. Doesn't mean it's the be-all and end-all and the perfect answer to everything. So the dialogue has been quite interesting to listen to, because some people look at this model and go, I think it's missing this or this, and other people are looking at it and going, wow, this is a great foundation on which to base the next piece of research. All right? So just remember, it's a tool. Okay? You don't necessarily have to agree with everything it says. Right? If you don't agree, you have to think through, why don't I agree? What is it in my experience that makes me question something here? Right?
One quick question, Dr. Weld, I was going to ask.
Sure.
For the chapters that are coming up between now and the end of the semester, Will there be another short exam, or will you go ahead and just throw everything into the final exam after?
Oh, no,
this
no, no,
week?
no, no, no. I don't do, no, 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 no. I don't do final exams. I think they're a waste of time. No,
Gotcha.
there'll be the last exam will be on the material since the exam we just took.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I just don't philosophically agree with finals because all you do is cram everything you've learned and you don't, or everything you've seen for the semester and you don't learn anything. Right? What I hope by chunking it up is that that gives you the opportunity to actually learn a little bit of the material. So, and this is, I don't have my notes with me. I don't know what I did with my notes. So I'm reading this today. This is supposed to be a fly-in, so I might actually open it up and do it a different way. See if we can make. So we can see this properly. Let's see if it will pick up on. Yes. Okay. Here we go. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
All right. So the reasoning behind their work to start to put the model together, right, which took several years, was that they felt that working with fundamental motor skills, they both work with children and teenagers. We all work on the idea that we want to improve. You know, if I look at my MSU chart or I look at my TGMD characteristics and scores, that what we want to do is to help children get to the most competent level of that skill, right? Before we throw them into a game where they have to use the skill, right? And so the belief was that this idea of motor competence in early childhood was really important to them being engaged in physical activity outside of school, perhaps at the home or on holiday, and that building this motor competence then helps children develop positive perceived competence for motor skills so that they'll try new stuff, right, and develop a bigger repertoire of movement skills, okay? And so that was really the kind of starting point. And so here I think this is a group of people who are all getting excited about going mountain biking on some rough trails and up some hills and things. And then we have our friend who maybe will not enjoy that activity very much at all, right? And so chances are they would opt out of that day out with their mates, right? And so that's what we want to try to avoid, is this situation where movement and being physically active is so uncomfortable, right, and so difficult that I choose not to do it rather than deal with those issues, right? And then, of course, the choosing not to do it makes things worse. Okay, so this is the final model of their ideas. The initial 2007 model was a little less detailed than this. And so what they're looking at is what are the influences on physical activity, all right? So here you see we have our motor competence, and here we have our physical activity. And what Stogner, Goodway, and the others felt was that physical activity in early childhood, so EC here means early childhood, MC middle childhood, LC late childhood, okay? So what they thought about was that the more physically active children are in early childhood, so 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That the more active they are, the more motor competence they exhibit. So their skills, if I'm actually, motor competence is their actual skill level, right? So if I test them with a TGMD, the more physically active children score higher. Okay? And then what they felt was that as the child gets into middle childhood, that this motor competence, this skill level that they've developed, actually starts to drive, so the arrow goes the other way now, drives how physically active these children are. So by middle childhood, if they're not competent at those fundamental motor skills, then they start to become less active, right? And the children that are highly skilled stay physically active given the opportunity, all right? So that's an important switch because it highlights how crucial those early childhood years are to driving physical activity as we get older, right? And then they wanted to look at the link between perceived motor competence. So remember, perceived motor competence is what the individual thinks they can do, as opposed to what the actual performance is, right? So they wanted to add perceived motor competence into the picture. And what they believed, what they saw, was that in early childhood, the child's perception of their motor competence drives or is very important to their actual motor competence. So, for example, I haven't seen it, I don't think I've seen it this semester because we don't have any children who are really, really, really severely overweight and obese. But last year we did have several. And it was quite interesting, the difference in behavior of the children who were very obese, right? So one kid ran around the playground like a nutcase, right? Run. I mean, it wasn't really a run because there was no flight phase, but he thought he was running, and he was having a whale of a time. He was really enjoying himself. And then he would go over and he'd pick up the bat and he would whack the ball and he'd do a good job of hitting the ball, and he just had the best time, right? Because somewhere in his mind, he was good at this, right? So I would credit his parents with positive reinforcement. Oh, you're running so fast, come on, let's run some more, right? Now, how we got obese in the first place, I don't know, right? But it was really interesting to watch him, his perception of his motor competence was much higher than his actual physical skill level because of the weight, right? And then there was another child who was also obese, who wouldn't try very much at all. He'd do the balancing stuff, was very happy to do the balancing stuff. He would do the obstacle course, try to get him on the running road. Oh, no, not happening, right? Because somewhere in his head, he knew running wasn't gonna be fun, right? He's not good at running, okay? So that arrow here, perceived motor competence in early childhood, if they think they can do it, right? Remember that in early childhood, they're not very accurate at judging their true competence, right? And again, we see some changes when we get to middle and late childhood, because now the arrow goes both ways. So that means if I can persuade them that they're quite good, right, that it's going to be fun, it will help them improve their actual skill level. But by middle to late childhood, their actual skill level, they're starting to compare themselves to other children on the playground or in the gym, right? Their actual competence starts to impact their perception of their motor competence. So they start to realize that they really suck at this, right? And that has negative consequences, right? As we see on the other side. So my early childhood situation is relatively positive if I can persuade them that they're good, right? They think they're good, they'll be very physically active, right? And remember that being physically active in early childhood drives motor competence, right? Again, as they get older, that arrow starts to flip around a little bit, all right? Because now we might have a few children who still either are not, maybe are a little cognitively delayed, so their cognitive development is a little behind, and so they're not at the point where they're comparing themselves, or they've been taught not to compare themselves for whatever reason, right? Their perception is still quite high, and so they are still willing to be quite physically active. But we've got this other group now whose motor competence is driving their physical activity, so their actual skill level impacts their physical activity, and the less physically active they are, the lower their perceived motor competence is, right? So do you start to see the picture and the links here? Any questions yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so then they wanted to add in the fourth piece of the pie, right? Health-related fitness. Okay, so here we're looking at how long can they run for, how strong are they, how flexible, right? And in early childhood, we see that their actual skill level drives their fitness, and their physical activity drives their fitness. Okay? So the whole circle then is complete for early childhood. Right? If we can get them very physically active on the playgrounds, or in the backyard, or at the pool in the summer, then their actual skill level improves. Their perceived motor competence when they're young is typically higher than the actual picture, And all of this is going to work together to keep them leaner, to increase their muscle mass, right, and to keep them healthy. And again, we see a flip with middle and late childhood, right? So if I'm physically active, it will improve my fitness. If I'm relatively fit, it improves my physical activity, right? If I'm highly skilled, if my motor competence is good, then I'm likely to be more healthy, right? So we have this cycle here, right? And the key to all of this is that we know, because we've got data from 1970 that we've known about, right? We know the link between physical activity and overweight and obesity. We've known it for a long time, right? So that risk of obesity then can go in one of two directions on the model, right? If I'm highly active and I have good motor skill techniques and levels, right? And my perceived competence for new motor skills is high, and I'm relatively healthy and fit, then that drives a healthy weight, and the healthy weight cycles back in to motor competence and physical activity, right? If, on the other hand, we take the other road, right, and we have children who are low physically active, their motor competence is not very high, their perceived competence is not high because their actual motor competence is poor, right? So when you introduce a new skill for them to have a go at, because it might be fun to do something different, they may not engage in that because they've already decided they're going to fail, right? And therefore their health fitness is low, right? They're overweight, they might be leaning already to obesity, their cardiovascular fitness is not very good, so even if they try to run, they can't keep it up for very long, all right? Carrying that extra weight increases the workload dramatically, so it all becomes a lot harder, and what we end up with is unhealthy weight or obesity, and that cycles back negatively to disengage with motor skills and physical activity. Okay? So as I said, it's a model, it's an idea, it's a picture that you can use to explain something you're watching or to underpin your philosophy of what you want to achieve with your students or your clients, right? Or your athletes even, although athletes wouldn't really, depending on the sport, your athlete wouldn't fit into this cycle very well. This is much more geared to a normative population, right? So we've got this positive spiral of engagement because we're healthy, we are always active, our motor skills are really good, we like doing movement, we enjoy it, it's fun, so we do more of it. Or we have this, I'm not very active, I'm not very healthy, I'm a little bit overweight or a lot overweight, my motor skills aren't great, I know they're not great, and moving isn't fun, and so I disengage from moving. right? And I play computer games instead. Right? Does that make sense? Anything you want me to go over again on the model?
I think we have it down pretty solid, but will it be up on, what's it called, like either this PowerPoint or the specific page for this? Will that be up on like our notes or anything like that for us to look at later?
Yes, I thought the PowerPoint was up, but I will double check that. If it's not there, I'll make sure it's there.
No.
And I think I have the initial article with a slightly simpler version before they added in some of the other pieces up as a reading, in case you want to look at it. I don't think I've got the complicated article up because it's a bit heavy to read. So then the kind of tie-in, right, that they made in the article was that motor competence is key to supporting children being physically active or choosing not to be physically active. And if we go back to the 1970 pile of data, there's clear indication that physical activity tracks forward. So if I'm physically active when I'm young, I'm more likely to be physically active in middle childhood and late childhood, and therefore in adolescence, and therefore as an adult, right? If I've already opted out by the time I'm 6 or 7, then middle childhood, I'm doing less, late childhood, I'm doing less, adolescence, when I start in the States to get to choose whether I do PE or not, I choose not to, right? So, negative spiral of disengagement, right, is linked to low motor competence, which drives low physical activity levels and low fitness. And then the spiral just goes down and these children become more and more inactive. Right? The positive spiral of engagement, high motor competence, drives higher levels of physical activity and higher health-related fitness and perceived competence, and that drives the children to become more physically active and try more things. Right? Climb a tree, or go and take a tennis lesson, or a golf lesson, right? So that's a kind of summary overview of the paper that your textbook is talking about on page 252, right? And as I said, what I hope to do for Thursday could really do with a 24-hour Wednesday and a half that no one else knows about. So, but what I will try to do for Thursday is then pull together some of the more recent research that builds on this paper and see what we have found out since 2008. Okay? Questions?
I think you pretty much got it.
I do love this model and this article, I have to say. So, yeah, I do get a bit carried away with it, sorry.
That's okay.
But it just says everything that I believe in my heart to be true, which is why I work with toddlers and preschoolers and not with teenagers, because I honestly believe that's where we've got to start making the difference. So, okay, well, the Child Development Centre is closed. The director believes it's unlikely to open now until January. So at the moment, it doesn't look as though I will have any more film clips to load for you to analyze. And so I have to think about how we're going to tackle lab for the remaining couple of weeks. So I haven't, something else I haven't decided on yet. It's mulling around in my brain. So that means there's not going to be any more, or there's not likely. I mean, I'm hoping maybe they open for a couple of days next week. But at the moment, they're only allowed to serve, what did you call it? Emergency people, right? So like the lecturers on campus who take their kids, they can't take their kids there. Only a firefighter could take their kids in. So I think she's going to keep it closed through January, which is sad. However, the good news is that the child that tested positive that led to all this is asymptomatic and not unwell, and everybody else so far has tested negative. So that's really good news on that front. So yeah, I'll keep you up to date on that, but I think there won't be any more playground films, which is a bit sad. The weather was so gorgeous yesterday, it broke my heart not to go to the playground and be with the children. So, yeah, keep an eye out on announcements and emails in the lab class on Blackboard, just so that when I do make a decision how we're going to finish off, you get that. And I'll see you on Thursday to finish off Chapter 12.
Sounds good.
And I will double check to make sure that this lecture is available on the lecture notes list. Okay.